আলাইকুম, গুড ইভিনিং। আপনাদের সবাইকে স্বাগত জানাচ্ছি আমাদের 5th episode of MA Interviews, an investor's guide at this difficult time. আজকের এই 5th episode we have got three fantastic panelists and they bring three different perspectives. First of all, we have Ijaz Bhai, president of BYLC. He has been in the leadership industry for the last 10 years and has been doing an amazing work with the young population of Bangladesh. And he has just recently also launched BYLC Ventures. And you might have seen him busy last week with the Resilience Summit that he has done. Welcome, Ijaz Bhai, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Minas Bhai.
We also have, sure. We also have Maliha Appa. You know her very well, I'm sure. She has been, building her business in Bangladesh and has been raising fund from international investors. And she has also been considered, some of the startups who are attending the show today, they've reached out to me and they said they're here to hear from Maliha Appa. Thank you so much for spending your invaluable time with us, Maliha Appa, and I look forward to hearing from you more.
Thank you. It's a privilege. Thank you.
Absolutely. And then last but not the least, we have Sanjayan, very long-standing friend of BetterStories and also somebody who is very actively supporting ecosystem building work here in Bangladesh and also brings in a bit of a global perspective as well as Avishkar goes and invests in countries in Africa, Asia, countries including Sri Lanka, Indonesia, India, and of course, Bangladesh. So this is our 5th episode. And we have been doing it because startups have been asking us a lot of questions. And frankly speaking, we could not answer all the questions that they were bringing to us. And we thought this is an important time where we get together and find the best experts to help answer some of the questions. That's the least that we can do as an organization that has been, at the forefront of ecosystem building in Bangladesh. Those of you who don't know, we have been here for about 11 years now, and we have helped, about 480 plus startups, and we have so far delivered 14 accelerators. So this is the 5th in the row, and we have had 4 other episodes. And thank you so much for coming here today. And just before we get to the panelists and ask them all the questions that you have kindly sent in, we will just want to understand who you are in the room. And if you can kindly share your answers by way of a poll that will just now be launched, I think we will know a little bit more about you. So behind the scene, my crew is sending you a poll. You will see in a bit the first question in front of you, and that gives us a bit of information on the makeup of the audience today. And while doing it or waiting for it, please do feel free to write down your name. The question is right here. So why don't you take a moment and do answer the question right away. So we will have it for a minute and host and panelists cannot vote. So Maliha Appa, Ijaz Bhai, Sanjayan, unfortunately, you will not be able to vote, but you will be able to see the response in a bit as we get the answers in. Those of you who have finished giving your answer, you can write down who you are and which country you are from. And you can also introduce your startup. And you can also ask any questions that you have in addition to the question that you have sent in. So in a bit, we will get to know what is the makeup of the room in terms of how many months of business runway that they have got, because the theme of today is survival till the end. So as we all know, how long it is going to be, that's a question that we don't have an answer to. So it's important that at least what we know, we try to find an answer to those questions. So we're waiting for the responses to come in. And yes, it's right here. It's 56% has got 4 to 6 months. I think that's quite encouraging. And 33%, 1/3, has got 7 to 12 months. That's a surprise to me, honestly speaking. I was not expecting that. I was looking at all the global perspective and all the global data, and people having 4 to 6 months are already considering them privileged. And the fact that there is only 10% or 11%, 1 to 3 months, seems like we're doing good, at least for the people who are joining today. So thank you so much for joining the first poll. So panelists, you know the makeup of the room. They have a fairly good runway. And I think still there are a lot of uncertainties, the demographies, the behavior pattern, the consumer behavior, all have changed. The world has changed in last couple of weeks, and we're here. And I would like to introduce, get to the introduction bit, and how I would like it to be done is I'll give you your first question. You take that, and before you take that question, I'll be grateful if you can introduce who you are, what you do, and then you take the question. So first, I would like to start with Ijaz Bhai. Ijaz Bhai, this is a crisis. It began with a public health crisis. And then IMF has declared it to be a recession, the great lockdown recession. And people are talking about a humanitarian crisis because of these two other crises. So how do you see it panning out? What's your take on it? And how would you tie it in back to, the future, particularly for the startups? So that's your first question. Please introduce yourself for the audience and then address the question.
Thank you, Minaz Bhai. It's wonderful to be here with all of you. I'm delighted. My name is Ijaz. I run the Bangladesh Youth Leadership Center. I first wanted to be an economist. I was trained as one. I was not very good at it, so I changed my career. Then I wanted to be a leader. I also did not do very well in that. And then I became a teacher of leadership. So now I teach leadership mostly to young people. I connect young people to jobs. While trying to connect young people to jobs, I saw that there are not enough jobs in Bangladesh. Then I got into investing. So I run BYLC Ventures, through which we invest in young people. We provide seed funding. We run an online academy, BYLC X, through which we are trying to democratize leadership education in Bangladesh. We run physical programs. We connect young people to jobs. And we are doing a lot of work on COVID-19 right now in the country. So I am not a public health expert, so but I will hazard a guess, an educated one, on how I see the health situation playing out in Bangladesh. According to the World Health Organization, as you all know, 1 in 6 people will be seriously affected by COVID-19, and this disease will require the person to be in in the emergency room in ICU. So 1 in 6 people. So in Bangladesh, we have just seen that the number of cases are going up. What is the biggest challenge for Bangladesh is we don't have the health infrastructure in the country to support the number of people who will require to be taken to ICU. We have, according to the UN, around 1,700 ventilators in Bangladesh. Ventilators which are capable of supporting in the ICU. There are different grades of ventilators, but ICU quality ventilators, we have around 1,700, which roughly plays out, if we say our population is 165 million, around 82,500 people have 1 ventilator. So imagine if there is a widespread of this pandemic in our country, what is the future for the citizens of Bangladesh? So that is a major concern that we have. Most developed countries do not have adequate ventilators. Many of the largest producers of ventilators are ramping up their production. And that's why the global community has come forward with this lockdown. So with the lockdown, what we are trying to do, we are trying to sort of spread the number of cases, the number of people who would need to go to the hospitals. We can increase the capacity of hospitals in the meanwhile. And that is the main strategy of the lockdown, which came out from this report at the Imperial College, as you know, which has also been debated. Is that the right strategy for countries like Bangladesh, in developing countries, where we don't have the fiscal space for prolonged lockdowns? By fiscal space, I mean the government's budgetary capacity to provide funding to the private sector or to the informal sector while the economy is in lockdown. Now in Bangladesh, we started the lockdown initially. It was, till April, now extended till end April. Now it's till the 5th of May. Now, this is going to have, if I come from the health to the economic perspective, it's going to have serious impact on our economy. And when something has a profound impact on the economy, it is bound to have a profound impact on the startups. And therefore, it is relevant for everyone who's in the audience, in our participants, to have an understanding of how this novel coronavirus is affecting the Bangladesh economy. Number one, 80% of our export earnings is coming from RMG sector, as you're all aware. More than 3 billion worth of orders have been held up or cancelled. A large number of people in our society work in the RMG sector. We have 60 million people. Out of 60 million people employed in Bangladesh, 85% of them work in the informal sector. 85% of them. And in this lockdown, their livelihood is directly challenged. So that's a major challenge that we are facing in our country. Out of 10 million people who earn remittance for us, and remittance is a major source driving our economy, as you know. Out of 10 million people, already between January and end of March, 650,000 of them have returned to Bangladesh. Where do our migrant workers work? The primary destinations in Middle East, in Saudi Arabia, in UAE, with the dwindling oil prices, their infrastructure projects are being held up. They don't require as many workers. So that's a big challenge that we have. The next destination for the migrant workers is Europe, in countries like Italy. Many of our workers are coming back from there. So you have the RMG sector, which is one of the major drivers of your export. You have the migrant workers, who are the major drivers of the rural economy, because when one person in the rural economy in a village goes abroad, they fund the rest of the family. So our rural economy is affected. The informal sector is affected. The RMG sector is affected. And because of this lockdown, many other sectors are getting affected. The government of Bangladesh has announced several stimulus packages. Initially, it was for the export, 5,000 crore was for the export oriented, only for the salary of the workers. But what essentially the government is doing is they're giving subsidized loan. These are not grants given to people. How will the government finance this stimulus package? Number one, they will finance it in the form of debt. They will finance it in the form of taxes, which is going to have further impact on the economy. And a country like Bangladesh does not have the capacity to offer multiple rounds of stimulus packages like the US economy would have. So America and Europe can afford for these prolonged lockdowns and offer multiple stimulus packages, but Bangladesh cannot. So we are really in a very difficult situation where the government has to take a decision that how long do I extend this lockdown? Because the economic consequences are massive. If you withdraw the lockdown, more people would need to go to the ICU. We don't have the health infrastructure. Then what is the strategy for the government? So we are, I foresee a rather critical picture for the rest of 2020. And I think in this context, our startups will have to think very hard about how to navigate this and how to move forward. So let me pause there with my sort of comments on the broader picture, the way I look at it, and then maybe I can expand on any particular point if it comes up.
Absolutely. I think that's a great, I would say, perspective, Ijaz bhai, and sort of, I would say, very pragmatic analysis of what's happening. I was actually part of another webinar earlier today, and on agriculture, and people were talking about how the cracks are becoming more visible now that the crisis has hit us hard. So there are a lot of realities that probably we are not thinking of. In particular, you have touched on a very sensitive topic. How much of government support will be possible for Bangladesh, and then what is realistic expectation on the side of not only the startups but everybody to have a share of that, because ultimately there is no public money, it's taxpayers' money. It's our money that goes into the stimulus packages, and if we are not able to pay that, how is it going to come back to some of the people who needs it most? So I will come back to you on that definitely later. But now I would like to move to Malihapa, is that we take a lot of pride in.
মিনহাজ ভাই শোনা যাচ্ছে না আপনাকে।
And over last couple of years from a ticketing. Can you hear me now?
ভেঙে যাচ্ছে, better still বলেন।
Acha, I will see how it goes. So can you hear me better now?
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ বলেন, আপনি বলেন।
Okay. So basically, I'm trying to come to your story, Malihapa. You have been on an excellent growth trajectory over the last couple of years, starting from ticketing to ride sharing, and then to expanding to food and other growth verticals for your company, getting more people as customers, getting more people into your team, unlocking global investment. So now, this has just happened and you were in the middle of it and we don't know what's going to happen. And what Ejazbhai has said, even the stimulus from government may not going to, be something that we can rely on. So how are you managing this situation, this crisis for you? I think a lot of startups are on the audience and they would really like to understand from your perspective and then would like to sort of get some guidance by having this perspective shared from you.
Yeah, thank you, Minhaj bhai. Assalamu alaikum shobaike, and it's great to be here. So, I guess Minhaj bhai asked us to introduce ourselves as well. I started Shohoj 6 years back in 2014 with bus ticket, and then we added ride sharing, food delivery, and truck booking as well last year. We have around 2 million monthly users, around 150K daily users on our platform, across the various things we do. And yes, we have been growing and raising money and growing, a typical startup story. Lockdown has hit us badly. Ride sharing is off per government ban. Bus ticket as well, travel is off per government ban. But truck and food delivery are on. But then in food delivery, most of the restaurants are closed right now. Like 99.9% restaurants are closed. So the volumes are really small. How are we coping with this? There's no easy answer. It's very, very difficult as a founder. The emotions involved in going through something like this, when you feel like you've given your blood to the company you've built. It's like you're, another child. And going through these difficult times, it's really indeed a big test of mental strength. It's not easy. So what are we doing? By all practical means, we cut down expenses big time, marketing expenses. If the people in the startup community know that ride sharing, food delivery, this kind of startups, they give a lot of discounts and incentives. And so we have a big percentage of our expenses is variable and discretionary. So we cut those down big time, very fast, as soon as we heard from the investors that this is going to be bad. So we cut down expenses, marketing expenses, promotional expenses, branding expenses, all of that. We have gone through like every single fixed expense we have, even the smallest expenses, questioned it, tried to negotiate with the software providers to give us credits. So you can reach out to Amazon, Azure, all the kind of cloud servers. They have different programs where you can get discounts. So we have done that. If you guys are funded by international VCs, they have kind of perks they give you, which I never looked at before. Now we are looking at those things to reduce cost. So really reducing your cash burn is the best thing you can do under the circumstances, and which means basically extending your runway. For us at Shohoj, we are very lucky that we have a couple of deeper pocketed investors who are very supportive and they understand. So which brings me to the next part of this thing, which is how are investors reacting to this? It's a global phenomena. One good thing about this whole thing is that it's happening all over the world. Investors understand that. They see that you did not shut down ride sharing on your own will, for example. So people are understanding of that. But at the same time, VCs, everybody has their limitations. VCs have their limitations. So, for us, the VCs invested first time last year. When they invest first time, they always keep money for second round. So we are fortunate that we'll have access to it, but be practical that the terms that they're going to come up with are going to be very, very tough now. The terms will become very stringent and we don't have a choice. So in a nutshell, as emotionally, it's extremely difficult to go through this. But, if you look at there will be a silver lining to every storm, right? So if you look at the outcome that could potentially come, which is basically Bangladeshis adapt digital technologies faster because they're forced to, they don't have a choice. So for us, we cut down costs. We are in, very good communication with our VCs, telling them what we are doing. We are, considering a pay cut as well. So that shows commitment to the VCs, which is a good thing as well. But the other thing we also did is we're looking at where the opportunities are, and we are launching new services. So for example, we started grocery delivery 2 days of the lockdown. So moving very fast and looking at your business model, looking at ride sharing, food delivery, all of these things will stay in Shohoj and open up when the lockdown is over. But we see opportunities in grocery delivery, for example, and we just ran into it and we launched it very fast. So looking at there will be opportunities coming out in this environment. Looking at those and kind of adding those or pivoting to those is going to be very important. But what is most important is to be in constant communication with whoever is giving you money and making sure that they're aligned with you in whatever you are doing.
Absolutely. Malihapa, there are a number of questions from the audience that I'll have to come back to you with. But for the moment, I will want to go to Sanchayan before I come back to you. Sanchayan, you bring in, I think, slightly wider perspective. You have portfolio companies in many countries of the world, including Bangladesh and India. So my question is to you, you have just heard, Maliha Appa's story and what she is doing to cope up. And you must have been also speaking to a lot of your portfolio companies in other countries. So would you, for the benefit of the audience, please, paint a picture, how is it panning out for, let's say, not just startups in Bangladesh or in the region, but in general? How is it similar or how is it different? That will be, your question to take, but of course, please do introduce yourself. I would love that for you to do as well.
Sure. Thank you, Minaz. Thanks for inviting me. So my name is Sanchayan. I work for a fund called Avishkar. We're a fund management business, but we also own a number of other sort of operating companies, including one of the largest microfinance companies in India, an SME finance company, and so on. On the fund management side, as Minaz said, we invest in many parts of the world, including Bangladesh. We grew out of India. We manage roughly about $450 million today across our different funds. That includes our investments in Bangladesh as well, India, Sri Lanka, Indonesia, and we just launched a fund for Africa as well, which is under fundraising at this point. Avishkar itself has invested in more than 65 companies. We've exited 20 plus of them, and the rest are still on the portfolio. Me personally, I've been sort of looking at Bangladesh now for the last 6 years since the time I joined Avishkar. I joined Avishkar specifically to raise and deploy this fund, which we call the Frontier Fund, which is investing in Indonesia, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh. So, that's kind of the introduction. So, Minaz, you asked this question about, how similar or dissimilar it is. The pandemic is obviously global, and it is affecting everyone around the world. And, if you look at something like India or Indonesia, or Sri Lanka, very similar to what's happening in Bangladesh. Slightly different stages given how it sort of reached and grew in these countries. If I look at India today, it's growing quite fast. It's starting to get to worrying levels in India right now. There are parts of India we've been able to isolate it much better than other parts of India. Unfortunately, all the large metropolis, including Bombay and Delhi, is very severely affected and continues to be on lockdown. The good thing that India did was that it announced lockdown very early. it shut down international travel and even domestic lockdown quite early to try and sort of reduce the spread. That seems to have had some impact. Seems to have reduced the growth rate of doubling from about 4 days to about 8 days as of yesterday, or 7.5 days as of yesterday, at a country level. But it's still alarming in different parts of the country. Right? So it's locked down, very similar to Bangladesh. Most businesses are not operating. People are not able to get out of home. All the challenges of a developing country that Ajaz mentioned earlier: very high population density, large number of poor migrant population, who were actually, many of them who actually got stuck when the lockdown was announced. India is much larger, geographic spread. And the migrants actually travel thousands of kilometers to find work, and many of them were actually stuck in different parts of India and could not get back. The social security system is obviously not that strong. The public distribution system for food, etc., again quite broad, but again not strong enough. So the same questions are in India as to how long can India afford to be on lockdown, and what happens when you open up lockdown. Exactly the same challenges. It is not under it. The government just does not have the wherewithal to be able to feed all the people who need to be fed for a very long time. The government is trying to push corporates to be humane and not try to cut salaries. They're trying to provide some level of support. There is a significant amount of budgetary support which has been provided, many of which will be delivered indirectly, in many ways similar to what's happening in Bangladesh, where liquidity to the banks is getting increased, and the banks are being incentivized to lend to the SMEs by counting them under what is called as priority sector lending. So, kind of support, trying to reduce interest rates at which people borrow, but how much of that will really, reach the real needy is still a bit of a question mark. So I think exactly the same kind of challenges in India as well. Probably a larger, bigger scale, given just the scale of India being larger. Right? How are people reacting to it? As Maliha said, I think that for anybody who is in any business which suffers from the lockdown, they are just hunkering down and cutting costs at this point. That's really mostly what people are doing. Wherever it's possible for people to pivot a little bit or add more services, they are doing that. So we have businesses which similar to what Shaw's is doing, who have moved into delivering groceries now. They were not doing grocery earlier. We have businesses which run brick and mortar schools, and they're moving into e-learning, for example. We have hospitals who have employed now telemedicine and made their doctors available to do telemedicine. So people are adapting to the changing reality, both for the short term and the long term, right? So that's really what is happening, and we can talk about runway and costs and all later on. The one thing I would say though is we and that goes to Avishkar as a group and the way we look at it, as well as I think many other people, many other entrepreneurs, is to take a reasonably long-term view on this. Right? Yes, the short term is very, very tough, but if you take a long-term view, there are value opportunities as well right now. It gives you an opportunity to actually do something with your business and come out possibly 10 times stronger than what you would have been if it was, going concern, if it was, what it was like 3 months back. It really gives you an opportunity to figure out what are the most essential elements of your business. What do you really need to focus on? What can you do to improve your customer, your offering to the customers and provide it at the lowest unit economics? Because you're really forced to do that. It's like necessity is the mother of invention. You do that. And it also gives you really good opportunities to reinvest in yourself and for people like us to invest in great businesses. So just to go back maybe a few years, in India there was I don't know if some of you may know, microfinance is allowed in India to be done by private companies, unlike in Bangladesh where it's largely done by NGOs. And there was a huge microfinance crisis in India, which happened in 2010. Essentially, the whole sector, stopped paying. There were some government regulations which came in. We said people cannot collect from poor people and so on. in the midst of all of that, Avishkar had actually made 3 investments in microfinance companies. We're probably one of the few guys who are doing it at that time. Each of those businesses, have multiple billion-dollar balance sheets today, and one of them is listed, and 2 of them are going to list it in the markets right now. So it does give you opportunity if you can identify what the strengths of those businesses are and look out 18 to 24 months and see what the world might be. It does give you an opportunity to come out better at the other end as well. So I think, so I think those will be probably my starting comments, and happy to take questions as we go along.
Sure. Sanjan, I think you also answered in a way one question that we had. I have been also speaking to some of the portfolio companies over the last few days, and people, some, not everyone, are also talking about not finding a way out, and they're saying they have nothing to do, so they're just waiting for it to go. And I believe what you have just said, there is a message for them. It's not just only a crisis, it's also an opportunity, and people should look into short-term and long-term opportunities into it. And everybody's adapting now, and there are a lot of opportunities that are opening up. So in that note, I would like to ask one more question to you. Although the question came from sports industry startup, but I think that can be extended to other also verticals that has been hit really hard, like tourism, for example, or travel, for example. So the question is, sports industry has taken the worst hit, with almost every major international and domestic tournament being postponed till next year. We have recently launched a digital platform, but most of our product is service-based, and currently all my projects are being withheld since early March. The question is, should I keep on paying my office rent and staff salary? So I think we got a few more questions around that. So the question is, if people are not certain when things are going to open up, and if they don't know if they can go back to their current business model soon, should they continue doing or waiting for good times to come, or they would rather pivot and do something as Malihapa has done, as Shahaj has done, as other, let's say, startups has done, finding a quick opportunity to stay in the game and maybe looking at longer opportunities that can keep them, surviving and help them thrive beyond this crisis?
Sure. So, it's a very specific business, obviously, sports, and which is clearly getting hit, similar to travel, say, and a very, very pertinent question for the founder then. See, I think if you go back to what I was saying earlier, you got to look at, let's say 12 to 18 months down the road and say, are we going to start having sports tournaments back? Are we going to have people playing? And is there a business model for me, for this business still in a post-COVID world? Now, if there is a business model for you in a post-COVID world, then I would urge you to stay in the game and try and survive this. Right? How you survive this is by adding on more services if you can at this point. Trying to raise some money with the conviction that post-COVID, I still can make this work. The sort of the specific question within that was, should I pay rent? And, should I cut costs or not? Absolutely. You obviously have to cut costs, right? And you got to look at, there are multiple types of costs. There are all sort of the different cost elements, and there is a people cost element. One thing that comes, to everybody's mind is, should I pay my employees and my staff and so on? And that's a whole new topic. Itself. I think our view is that that's something that should come last. You should look at every other cost line and try and extract the maximum that you can over there. And you'll be surprised if you start looking at each line and really evaluating, do I really need to pay this or not? I mean, because you have counterparties on the other end, from whom you have receivables, to whom you have payables, and with whom you have contracted. Everybody's suffering, but can you share that pain? And you would find that most people would either be willing or be forced to share the pain with you, if they believe that in the long run you want to make it, right? So yes, you should look at all of the cost elements. But whether or not you completely pivot or you just add on another service, it just depends on your conviction of what you see in a post-COVID world. because the fact is there will be a post-COVID world, right? And you got to see whether this business is going to remain in a post-COVID world. And if you have that conviction, then I would urge you to stay in the game. In the interim, find something else. If there are other opportunities which are allied, great. So like Maliha said, I mean, they're doing groceries, but I don't think Maliha is saying, and Maliha, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think she's saying that she would not do ride sharing going ahead. She's not pivoting to completely to doing groceries. She will be doing ride sharing when the market comes back, I presume, right?
Yeah. No. For us, it's temporarily shut down because government shut it down. As soon as the lockdown is over, when we're allowed to operate, we'll operate. See, for us, it's a bit easier because it's a super app strategy. So we can do many things under that strategy. But for others, you have to take a look, and if need be, we have to pivot. There's no option really. And in my personal opinion is that this COVID situation will continue for 18 months until the vaccine is out and is commercialized. People take the vaccine, the curve flattens. Only then will people, feel more confident, and economic activity will come back to normal. So I think the hard question to ask ourselves is, do I think I can raise money, or do I think I have enough money even after cutting down costs to survive 18 months? If not, then maybe it's time to look at other areas.
Sure.
Malihapa, I think now that you have came back, I think there is a question that might be something that you will be interested in answering. So Tanmay Deshpande has asked, do you think there will be a permanent shift in consumer behavior towards online products and services, likes of e-commerce, telemedicine, etc., in the longer term, or it's just a temporary phenomenon? If you would like to address that.
Yeah, sure. COVID will permanently change how we as human beings operate and how we do things. It's a permanent change. If you think about it, I have attended a bunch of government calls, and many of us have. People who did never use Zoom, they're all using it. So once you use a software, once you actually get to see how beautiful it is, you are going to use it again. So online adaptation, my mom's trying to get groceries from an app now as well. So online adaptation will definitely increase post-COVID. And yes, I mean, think about it. What we are all struggling with is explaining to our consumers, to our people, that do it online, do it in a software, do it digitally. It's easier. It saves time, all of that. I mean, imagine going to a panel, I would have to spend 1 hour getting ready, 2 hours in the traffic and going there. And here I am sitting in the house and doing this call. It's saving so much time. So, and that people will experience, nothing like first-hand experience. All the discounts and promotional expenses all of us startups do. Why? To make people use it a few times and get used to it. And now, I mean, in a way, it's a huge it's a huge blessing. People are forced, they don't have a choice but to order. They're scared of their own health to go to the grocery store. There was an article on CNN or Forbes or somewhere today where they were saying that grocery stores should not allow people in. So which means what? They'll have to sell online through delivery. The government is looking at many things in Bangladesh as well, where we could do direct delivery from the farmer to the table. So, those things, and as the government people are also using these different technologies, talking about it, they'll see the moja of it. And, it's nothing like it. So e-commerce, telemedicine, education, there are a bunch of areas where there will be permanent shifts in the way we do things. Social distancing may stay for a long time. People may become very careful about viruses. We all fall sick throughout the year without COVID. So I think it will definitely be a very long-term permanent change for the better.
Absolutely, I do agree with you, Malihapa. I think while we talk about that shift taking place and talk about those opening up new opportunities, I think there are some real questions that has come in. Questions about managing the teams now, managing the cash flow now. I think Sanchan, that's a great point to look into. Other lines than people, but it is time while people are having to make tough choices. Maybe they will not have at a point the luxury of not touching, let's say, the salaries and so forth. So I'm going to ask Ijaz Bhai now. A question came in. So many small tech entrepreneurs would not be able to pay their employees, and many would lose jobs. in this scenario, how to keep peace of mind and continue doing what you do best. So that's one part of the question. And I think there is one more question which is related, and I would also like to give that to you in the same go. How do you deal with breaking the bad news to your colleagues that they're being laid off? And also, how do you keep those who remain motivated and running at full steam? So you have got two part there, you know, how to keep your peace of mind if you're a founder, if you're a leader, while you are having to cut your salaries, staff salaries. And the second one is how do you break that news to your employees? And also those who remain, how do you, for example, keep them motivated and get them to still remain energized and delivering at full steam?
There's a lot of areas to cover, but I think let me build on what Sanchayan and Maliha had said. I think I fully agree. A crisis presents an opportunity. There will be winners, there will be losers. The winners will be more opportunities in e-commerce, online. That's the future. But what about, think about a university that just spent $100 million to build a campus. What's their future? Brick and mortar stores. So those are, there will be winners and there will be losers. And I think for a founder, for an entrepreneur, it's important to understand that the entrepreneur's challenge is to envision the future, and people who can see 2 years ahead with more clarity and accuracy will emerge as the winners. And that's what's going to differentiate how clearly you can see how the world is going to be shaped. And that is what all three of us are doing. We are sort of giving our projections of how we think things will change, in a post pandemic world. So I think the entrepreneur's challenge is to figure out or have that clarity in which direction is the world headed and where is my business in that trajectory. Am I in the sort of upward trajectory, or is my business sector going out? And then you have to take these hard decisions. As an entrepreneur, in times of crisis, a company can operate without looking at the CEO for the whole year when things are normal. But in times of crisis, the most important thing for an entrepreneur is to be present and is to be physically present. So the first leadership task of the entrepreneur is to be physically present via Zoom or whatever app you use, because that has a calming presence on the whole team. I think the next task of the entrepreneur is to be authentic. And none of us know what the future holds. So I think there is value in just being open and transparent with the team. Look, guys, this is what the situation is. I don't know what the future holds. Yes, people expect the CEO to project confidence and optimism, but that also needs to be checked with the reality. That if you foresee that 3 years down the line you're going to run out of cash and you cannot have people, and you're telling your people things will be fine because you're the nice guy, you cannot upset people, you always want to be light. That's a limitation for the entrepreneur. So I think for the entrepreneur, what is important is pacing the news. If you give too much bad news too soon, people cannot take it. But if you just hold off the bad news, then you're misleading people. So the challenge is to prepare your team for the crisis. And as Sanchayan and Maliha, both of them have said, look at your cost, the fixed cost and the variable cost. After you have deducted every single cost, that's when you come to the HR. When you come to the HR, I think it's important for the entrepreneur to recognize, say you have a team of 100 people and you're going to get rid of 50 people. It's important for the entrepreneur to recognize that the 50 people who remain in the organization will also be demoralized. And every day they'll be thinking that when am I going to lose my job? So if you have 100 people, you need to get rid of 50 people. I'm not giving a prescription. I'm saying what I would do. I would rather give a deduction of salary for all 100 at some level and try to retain all of them. And it is possible that 50 people have no job because they work in the physical space. Maybe they're not used to the online, they're not relevant. And then the entrepreneur's challenge is to figure out, if you're paying people salary, then you might as well get the maximum out of them and deploy them in developing a new product, in pivoting, in doing whatever you can, making the most out of your people. And I'll just give you one example, okay? All our office assistants, they're now in the village. BYLC is running food distribution campaign because, one thing is, I think a crisis is there, we care about the organization has to survive, but I also care about society, because if society is not there, then who am I going to work for? Society has to be stable. So we are also doing a lot of work on food distribution. We have supported 2,000 families. We are going to do more. Now, previously, all our executives, these are all, well-paid executives, were involved in distributing the food. And what we decided is, as soon as the lockdown ends, we bring all our office assistants to Dhaka and engage them, because they have no work. Our office is shut. But how do we deploy them in a way that my other officers can think about revenue generating activities? They can think about online programs, or before our thinking before was, we are Bangladesh Youth Leadership Center. But after going online, we are thinking, why can we just not run programs for South Asia? What's stopping us from running programs in Indonesia? What's stopping us from running programs in India? So there are a lot of new opportunities. So I would encourage entrepreneurs to think along those lines. Be honest with your team. Sugarcoating is not always the best strategy. Be transparent, be vulnerable. And if people see that you're suffering, you're also in pain, people will come along with you. And I think people follow leaders who lead by example. When we talk about leaders, okay, what comes to our mind? We think about Akbar, Alexander the Great, all the historical figures. Were these people who were at the back when the war was going on? The heroes we look up to, they were always on the front line. So the leader, whoever is in charge of the company, has to be in the front line, has to face the crisis, has to be present, and has to own up to their part of, own up to the responsibility. If you're going to reduce salary of your staff, the first one should be the CEO. And then when people see our CEO is, leading by example, you're more likely to have people follow you. And I think there's a tremendous opportunity for entrepreneurs who can support their team. The amount of loyalty you can get from your team, if you support them at this stage when the whole world is falling apart, these guys will give their life for you. So I would encourage all the startups in this sort of audience to think hard about being with your people and trying your level best to to save them. Does that make sense? And the last thing I want to say,
Absolutely.
so we have also done our end of the world calculation. What if the whole world falls apart? Okay. And then I said, listen, guys, I have a fixed deposit. I had a chat with the board, and the board said, no matter what happens, you're not breaking that fixed deposit to buy, to pay salaries. I said, all right, fine. So I told all my team members, listen, if the world falls apart, all our donors violate their agreement, the British government bankrupts, the Dutch government bankrupts, then the FDR that I have, I'm going to buy rice, lentil, oil for all of you. Every week, I'm going to send food to you. Whatever I eat, you're going to eat. No one's going to starve to death. So don't worry about your food. But now let's work from that assumption and start to think how we can improve the situation, how we can diversify our risk, right? And when Boris Johnson went to the ICU, we were really worried. What's stopping him the next day and saying, shut down DFID from all around the world for one of our major funders? And so everyone is in a risk. I think we have to navigate. But being with your people, I think, is important.
Absolutely. I now know who to reach out to if I need to. So great. And then something that you have said, being physically present. I was looking for an alternative, in these days and time when everything is online. Being physically present sounds a bit more, oxymoron. But, I know everybody got that. The leaders, they need to sort of lead from the front, and I think it's for the people, the larger community, the society. If they survive, they can be our customers, they can pay for our products and services. So I think there is a lot of wisdom in that. I would like to use that segue to request Maliha to talk about something that she has just launched today. Those of you who are part of the show, you may have already received this call, or you have received it before, that this show has partnered up with Mission Safe Bangladesh at the beginning. And we're, of course, opening up, a lot more initiatives like that for the wider society. When people come forward, it's our duty also to amplify that. So I would like to request Maliha Appa to talk about the initiative that Shahaj has launched today, and also maybe invite the audience on the call today to go and be part of that initiative. Maliha Appa?
Sure. Thank you, মিরাজ ভাই। আমরা আজকে একটা ইনিশিয়েটিভ লঞ্চ করেছি, এটার নাম দিয়েছি আমরা করব জয়, খিদাকে জয় করা। সো আমরা কুকড মিল ডিস্ট্রিবিউট করছি। বিদ্যানন্দন ফাউন্ডেশন আমাদের সাথে আছে, ওরা ডিস্ট্রিবিউশনটা করবে। অ্যান্ড আমাদের রেস্টুরেন্ট পার্টনার, আমরা তো ফুড ডেলিভারি করি, সো উই আর ইন কন্ট্যাক্ট উইথ অল দ্য রেস্টুরেন্টস। সো জয়স কুক হাউস নামের একটা রেস্টুরেন্ট, দে হ্যাভ কাম ফরওয়ার্ড অ্যান্ড দে আর বেসিক্যালি কুকিং দ্য মিল. It's a simple meal of khichuri and ডিমের তরকারি. It's 49 টাকা. And এটা আপনারা আমাদের অ্যাপে গেলে you can order a meal, you can contribute even one meal 49 টাকা and as much as you want. And সেটা বিদ্যানন্দন ফাউন্ডেশনের মাধ্যমে আমরা ডিস্ট্রিবিউট করছি গরিব মানুষদেরকে, যাদের people in need. So the whole concept behind this is all kinds of activities are going around. We felt like we just wanted to make this very affordable and very real also. So which is why we picked a very low price meal, 49 টাকায়। তো আপনারা সহজের ফেসবুক পেজে গেলে এটা ডিটেলসটা দেখবেন। অ্যাপটা সহজের ফিনোমিনাল টিম খুব তাড়াতাড়ি করেছে আমাদের রেস্টুরেন্টের ভিতরে। সো এটার একটু বেটার ভার্সন সামনে আসবে, বাট আশা করি আপনারা ব্যবহার করবেন এবং যে যতটুকুন পারেন এগিয়ে আসবেন, ডোনেট করবেন। রমজান মাসও আসছে, আই মিন রিয়েলি দিস ইজ আজকে আমি একটু বেরিয়েছিলাম, একটু গাড়ির ভিতরে ঘুরছিলাম গুলশানের ভিতরে, and there were so many people lined up মস্কের সামনে। আর মানে it's heartbreaking to see that, it's very difficult. So আমরা যে যা পারি, the concept is যে যা পারি তাই নিয়ে আমরা এগিয়ে আসি আর মানুষদেরকে সাহায্য করি। Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maliha. I'm sure we've been receiving overwhelming support for last few calls, and we will continue to have initiative like yours, being extended to the people, those who need it most. I'd like to come back to Sanjan at this point. There are multiple questions on the chat room, and we also received a lot of questions before. So the world has changed, and we discussed a lot of things that startups are doing and governments are doing. So one question that we had is about the change that the startups can expect from the investors, for example. So if I read it out for you, what compromises should startup expect to have to make when going to investors in times of economic crisis? So you can talk about, if there was another question, if you have stopped looking into investment opportunities for now, or also what are the new realities that startups should be prepared for on that. And there is another part to this question. Suppose a startup already has a term sheet for the next round and the current runway is almost over, but because of the current situation, all investors are taking an indefinite pause. So what's the best alternative in this scenario? So if you would like to answer that, Sanjayan.
Sure. So just to give a kind of big picture overview of what's happening to the investing world, and I think Maliha talked about a couple of that thing already. So the way an investor looks at an investment, it's a function of how the market is going to be, the macro, market, the economy, and within that, the market that the startup operates on, and then all the characteristics of the startup, right? Starting from the founder to the business model, the economics, and so on. Now, unfortunately, this macro is impacted quite significantly, right? And it will stay impacted for a long time. So you may have the best startup in the world right now, but you will still be affected by that. Having said that, VCs exist to make investments, and VCs have dry powder, and they want to make those investments. If I take something like India, and you asked about that question earlier, I mean, as of end of 2019, VCs had about $19 billion of dry powder for Indian startups, right? And they will have to make those investments. They will do that at some point. What is happening today, though, is that everybody's focusing inward to start with. Right? So everybody is keeping that dry powder for the business, for their existing portfolio companies. They will look at new businesses very rarely. It's not that they will not look at it. They will look at new businesses very rarely. But the first priority is to the existing businesses, right? Because they realize that all of the businesses are going to need that runway. There was that poll that you did, Minaz, in the beginning, and it said that some of the people are actually have 6 to 12 months of runway. We think that's still short. We think that people need 18 months of runway. So, and that's how we are planning. That's how I think a lot of the investors are planning and saying, extend the runway to about 18 months. Can you last till, late 2021? So that's the first thing that's happening. There is general risk averseness, which basically means that, the terms which you'll get offered will be lower. If you look at sort of multiples that you used to get pre-COVID and the multiples that you're going to get post-COVID, not just immediately, but possibly in the more longer run, there is going to be a difference in that. So valuations will take a hit. Some of business models, which, so the attractiveness of business models will also change. There was this time of, burn and grow at all cost. And that I think, already started to take a little bit of a hit with the WeWork fiasco and, SoftBank getting into trouble and so on and so forth. It was already starting to be questioned. I think there's going to be a lot more questioning. Raising money for startups is some bit of storytelling, some bit of reality, right? I think reality is going to be valued a lot more. What do you have on the ground? How are you the best? How are you going to survive later? What are your unit economics? So things like unit economics are, I think, going to be, going to be a lot more in focus than earlier. What's your organic growth? I mean, cut out the marketing. Do people still love your product? Will they buy your product even if there are no discounts? What's your organic growth? What's your organic revenue? What's your unit economics on a sustainable basis? I think those questions will become a lot more relevant. Can you still find money? I'm sure you'll find money, right? I mean, as I said, VCs have money. People like Avishkar invest actually in times like this, right? So yes, for the right businesses, you should still find money. It will be a longer runway. I mean, it'll take longer though, right? For the next 3 to 6 months, expect people to be very, very slow. People are still trying to come to. This is a world-changing event. I think, even if you want to invest, I think you will still take your time. For the next 3 to 6 months, it's going to be quite slow. Okay, one of the other questions. I mean, one of the questions you mentioned was what terms are going to change. I think you will expect. So, I mean, there are lots of terms which go into the VC, into a VC term sheet. Fundamentally, as I said, there are, valuation will take a hit. You will expect VCs to want more rights generally. I mean, this is not the forum to get into what specific rights, and I think it's all going to depend on company to company. Right? But generally, it's going to be a more risk-averse environment. People will want more rights. People will, people will want to value a little lesser than what you might have expected to get earlier. If you are in conversations with somebody, you should just try and close that deal. Right? I think this is what we are advising all the startups. Start with if you need the money to extend your runway to 18 months, start with your existing investors, see what they can do to support you. Then talk to the people who know you very well and see how much money they can give you. If you're in discussions with somebody, liquidity and runway is more important than valuation and terms today. You need to survive to be able to get that value. If you have any sight of money, take it, right? Even if it's not on terms that you would have expected in a pre-COVID kind of a scenario. Extend your runway. You may have to give up a little bit, but it's okay because you're in very, very uncertain terms. So I think those will be kind of big picture comment. Did I address all the questions?
Yes, you did. Sanchan, maybe while you were still answering, one other question. So this is more from the investor's point of view, maybe more like an angel investor's point of view. How to decide between investing to adapt and staying fiscally conservative in times of economic crisis. Is it really a good time to get out and look for a good investment opportunity, or rather they should wait it out? So any advice for an investor or an angel investor at this time?
So the angel investor is a slightly different bucket, right? I mean, an angel investment is typically is more is more emotionally driven in many senses. You like a specific thing. you're not an institution like a VC or a PE fund who has a commitment to invest money on behalf of somebody else. It's your own checkbook that you're cutting. You also need to look at your own portfolio. I mean, around the world, what we are seeing generally is that there is more, reticence in angel investors to write large checks today because a lot of their own portfolios have gotten hit, right? Because valuations across the board, capital markets valuations are down 20-30%. But for an angel investor, I think it's just going to be the conviction that you have in that business. If you like a particular business, if you believe that it's doing what it should do, and it is adapting to what the new world is going to be, I mean, you could find some great deals to invest in today. It's finally going to come down. For an angel investment perspective, I think it's going to come down to your conviction.
Great. Thank you so much, Sanchan. Now we will have some questions. I will, share it with you, all the panelists, and just feel free to pick it as you feel like. So one question is about reducing expenses. Going back to the same question, I think this has been one of the key questions that everybody has been grappling about. And Mahbub Rabbani Arithro has asked, everyone is suggesting that we reduce expenses. A big portion of such expense is payroll. So instead of layoff, can we suggest leave without pay or a structural pay cut for those department functions, which is more dependent on physical executions or now redundant during COVID lockdown? So anybody who would like to take it? Manihapo, would you like to take it?
Yeah, I'll take it. Yeah, it's a good idea, but be careful. Look at the legal implications of it. Anita Ghazi Islam has been really be helpful to the startups. She wrote an article on the Daily Star about this as well. So you have to be careful what Bangladesh law allows. I think the layoff definition in the law is different. It's actually furlough as we understand it. So under that definition, you could put somebody on 45 days of 50% pay cut. Bangladesh law calls it layoff. And then extend it for 2 weeks. And after that, if it's a business retrenchment, you have to let them go, or you bring them back on board. But I think during this 45 days or this 2 months of half pay, you cannot call them to work. So bottom line is, it is an idea to be explored, but you have to really look at the legal implications of it as well.
Maniappa, maybe, yeah. Sanchan, you wanted to add something?
Sorry, yeah, maybe, what I was going to add is actually just reiterating what I heard Ijaz say earlier, that yes, startup costs the HR costs are pretty significant, but you must also realize that, in a startup, people bring actually most of the value. Right? It's an idea which the people really have to build on. Be conscious of the fact that, if you let go of good people, you'll find it very difficult to find them again. And therefore, if you can retain people by even paying them less, it is probably the best way to go about. You should also consider what those people will do if you let them go. This is not a market where they're going to get another job, right? And you need to be, I think, as a leader, you just need to consider yourself responsible for people as well. So yes, tough choices may need to be made. I mean, it depends on how bad a position you're in. I mean, if you have just 1 month of runway, that's a tough call, but you should probably find ways to see if you can retain the people if you can.
No, absolutely. I just wanted to add to what Sanchan is saying. Startups, we don't have assets. We are tech startups. We don't have any assets. People are the biggest asset. In the Bangladeshi context, particularly where people haven't seen big exits yet, as a startup attracting good people compared to the telcos or the banks, it's very, very challenging. So we need to be very cognizant of that before we let go of people. So explore pay cut. Another idea is, think about your office rent. Do you really need a physical office now? In the next 18 months, nobody will want to come to office, most likely, until the vaccine's there. Some people will, most people won't want to. So maybe you let go of the office, save costs there, maybe make it a virtual office. I'm sure these are tech companies, people are very savvy, and they can work pretty well from home. So maybe look at that option, look at all your fixed cost option before you let go of people, pay cut everything, and letting go should be the last thing. Particularly because attracting talent is very difficult. But if you have to make that tough choice, you should consider it, because think of the bigger good. By letting go of 3 people, you could probably save the job of 6 more people. The startup survives, and that's another perspective to look at as well. But whatever you do it by the books, by the law, and do it in a humanitarian way. Try to help to get them a job. But I would say that in the worst case, consider this 2-month leave before you actually let them go.
Can I just add one more point on this, Minaz? I think just for the startup leadership, see, if you have to let people go, or even if you're making a pay cut or a reduction or any sort of tough HR choices, I think the best strategy to do is to do it one shot, to do it very consistently, clearly, and communicate it very well. I think in our experience, we found that where you lengthen this process, and you say, okay, I'll just cut 5 people today, and maybe I have to go 5 people tomorrow, or a week to 2 weeks later. That's a very bad strategy. It affects morale across the organization. So I think whatever you do, you need to be decisive, and try and do it one shot, and be very clear and communicate it very clearly to the team as to why this needs to get done.
I think there are a lot of wisdom that we receive from both of you, Maliha, and Sanjayan. One question that has come is probably related to this, and I would like to ask this question to Ijaz Bhai. So indeed, letting people go off is not necessarily a decision that anyone would make happily. But indeed, if we have to let people go, question number 1, how can we help them finding new opportunities? That's one. And also the second part of the same question is, if anyone is indeed in that situation where they have lost a job, what can they do at this time? So if you would like to provide some guidance.
I think this has been broadly addressed both by Sanjay and Maliha. I think the first thing is do it with a lot of compassion. You have to sometimes take hard and difficult decisions. If you think of the job of building a company, you're an entrepreneur, you've started, you've sailed from one shore, and with this ship you're going to end. The journey ends at another point, and sometimes 5 people may just fall off. Not everyone can make that journey, but to have that that compassion, that empathy, to acknowledge casualty, I think it's important. And you would be surprised to see how well people accept bad news if you can communicate that with empathy and honesty. Look, guys, we are all in a difficult situation, but for the greater good of the organization, because I am the CEO, my job is to protect the company. The company before people. The company comes first. And if you have to take a difficult decision, if you explain that to people, you don't lose, so that they don't lose face, then I think sometimes people are more willing to accept the loss. And in terms of helping, you can, but as Sanchayan said, it's a very difficult market. Where will people find jobs now? You can always give them a good LinkedIn recommendation, pick up the phone, call your friends, other people in the network. That's something that you can try. But this is really the last option. All other options must be explored, and then you come to this option if you must.
Absolutely. Jasmine, thank you so much. I think that's something people will find difficult to handle, but I think startups, end of the day, they depend on people. But again, I think first and foremost is survival. They have to survive first for them to be able to keep the people. So it's not an easy choice. But end of the day, if they can exercise empathy, humility, and also being decisive, I think all of that combined, they can probably make the right decision. Coming back to Malihap, I think it's more around the strategy that people can take now. So there is one question is around customer acquisition. Earlier you have said you have definitely looked at lines like marketing expenses to minimize your costs. So how do you keep acquiring customers at the moment? And in general, I think Armina has asked you if someone is just starting or thinking about starting, what kind of advertising and marketing strategies they can take during this period. So one is about your experience, how do you acquire? And if there is a new startup who doesn't have, the legacy and the bandwidth as yours, so what could be something that they can do? So two part of the same question.
Yeah, so for us, even if we have cut down marketing, we do have some budget which we are spending on social media and acquiring. But whether it be COVID or non-COVID or any time, the best form of marketing is word of mouth, referrals, customer testimonials. Have your customers refer you to another customer and they get probably one free order or something like that. So really using word of mouth, social media, what do you call it, user groups to popularize your services. I think that's the absolute best, because আমরা যখন কিছু কিনি, what we like, what we listen to most is what our friend is recommending. So influencer marketing, anybody can be an influencer these days. Anybody can get on social media and post a video about something they loved or tell their friends, tag their friends. There are many ways. So I would say, study up more word of mouth marketing, influencer marketing, referrals. Those would be my go-to places now, particularly when we are in cash constrained positions.
So Malihapa, আপনার জন্য আরেকটা question. For those startups who are having tough time and their doors are shut, is it worthy to collaborate and offer their skills and technology to other startups who maybe are still operating, or it's better for them to actually look to find a way to pivot to a completely new product idea?
Something we didn't, it's a good question. Something we didn't talk about yet is that this is also probably a good time to think about mergers. There are many small startups probably doing the same things. So, consider it, think about joining a bigger startup, and getting some shares there and building your dream there. Or think about reach out to corporates. Corporates may want to, telcos and all, they may want to acquire some startups for various initiatives they have. Banks may want to, they want to digitize things. Maybe there is some area where they'll be interested. The FMCGs of the world might be interested as well, for example, to digitize their logistics infrastructure, things like that. So yeah, it's absolutely, I would say that these are actually very difficult times. Raising money and all, like there are some practical considerations VCs also have. They will not invest in a company unless they physically visit you. So I think, I would hope and pray, Sunshine, that will change in a few months' time, that they'll digitally look at things. But the first time they're investing in an emerging market like Bangladesh, they'll want to come and visit you. So that's the reality of the situation. If you have local investors, well and good, you can find money from them. So basically, raising money will really be extremely difficult for all of us in this period. In that environment, look to bigger startups, look to corporates as well. They may want to invest in you. Little startups can get together, merge and build something bigger. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Appa. I think this is probably a good time to launch our second poll for the participants here. So you have heard all three panelists talking about different ways. You can extend your runway, different ways you can manage, decision making, make some tough decisions, and still be decisive and doing the right thing at this given situation. And as well as maybe some of the strategies that you can adopt to keep your business in existence. So let's see what is the next poll. and it will be around, what you might be able to do going forward to remain in existence. The question is in front of you. So as a startup, how do you see increasing your chances of survival? So option A, by collaborating with other startups in the same vertical. Option B, by pivoting to a new vertical. And option C, by letting the team go and joining another startup who is expanding, or you don't know as yet what could be your choice. So pick one, and then we get back to maybe more, optimistic side of the conversation, what future holds, what post-COVID, brings to us, and I will come back for a final round of questions to the panelists. And this will be an opportunity as we wait for the poll result to come out. We are also getting some questions here. And then some questions are specific to Ajaj Bhai. Maybe when your round comes, you can address some of them. So those are very specific about product market fit. Uh, yes. So we're waiting for the poll result to come out, and it's here, right here. So seems like 55%, the majority, they want to pivot to a new vertical, and 30%, one third, wants to collaborate. And of course, there are people who are not sure yet. And 5%, I think they're pragmatic. They know it's tough time and it's time to make those decisions as well to let the team go and join another startup. I think there are a lot of changes that's happening every week and every day. So a lot of uncertainties around, but I think this conversation, I hope and believe that might have helped you to sort of understand what are the choices and options you might have, what are the decisions that you might have to take, what are the hard realities that you will have to embrace. If this has helped you to make some of your decisions better and maybe execute them better, I think our job has been done well, at least for today. So we will come to the final round of questions to all of you, the panelists. And I would like you to conclude by painting a picture for the startups. I think it's not all gloom and doom. And then, of course, right from the beginning, we were talking about the lasting behavior change that has happened, and more people getting used to do things like online, classes, online shopping, online webinars like this. So there is going to be a big change also in the investment landscape, in the way people, let's say, look at life in general. People shop, people spend. So from an investor's perspective, Sanjay, if you can, talk about what are the ways, startups can look forward to take advantage of it post-COVID. So that will be also your last question. If you wanted to add any other message, please do feel free to add them.
Sure. Uh, so I'll address a specific question, but maybe a couple of generic comments as well. Yes, it's a bad time. Yes, probably for the first time, the whole world is suffering it at the same time. Right? I don't think in living history there has ever been a time where the whole world has been locked down. There have been pandemics earlier. There have been world wars earlier, where large parts of the world have been affected. But I don't think there's been ever a situation where the whole world is practically locked down. Across hundreds of countries, people are staying at home in various degrees, right? So it's a bit of a philosophical, but it's a bit of a wake-up call for humanity. So I think one of the we talked about how the world is changing. Yes, work from home, I think, is a reality, and everybody understands it's possible. There are lots of studies coming out on the productivity levels for work from home, and they seem to be pretty good. A number of us, in fact, have reported that we find work from home to be more productive than when you used to waste time, traveling and, in traffic. True for Bangladesh, true for India as well, right? So that's definitely a fundamental shift. What is also a fundamental shift is people's willingness to engage digitally and not needing to be physically present to do transactions. It was, only some of the early adopters you would move into that earlier, but now I think that change is going to be pretty permanent. It's going to be much faster, right? What is also true is I think there is a realization that humanity needs to be protected. And I think it's the whole big capitalist world is being questioned in some form, and it is probably going to be a more humane world. So, I mean, we happen to be impact investors, as you might know. I mean, we only invest in businesses where we also see a positive good happening to the low income population. We, over the last year or so, there's been increasing conversations around impact investing and, doing responsible investing and being sustainable for the world. I think all of that is actually going to become, is going to multiply a lot as well. I think people will want to work for businesses, invest in businesses which support the world as well. There's just an increasing recognition of the fact that humanity needs to be supported as well, and it's not just investing and making money and doing business, right? I think that's one kind of a fundamental change. In terms of specific business opportunities for VCs, I think it's really going to be the same kind of business which is going to thrive in a post-COVID world, right? I mean, there is going to be investment. People will want to look at the big macro sort of changes that's happening in the world, and if you fall into that bucket, which takes care of which actually thrives on those changes, great. I mean, will people invest in airlines much? I doubt that. Will people invest in Zoom? Zoom had a 20 times increase in its user base over the last month. Right? So so that things like that. Anything which supports work from home. I mean, SaaS businesses, software as a service businesses, for example, which can support businesses which are working from home. All of that is going to be, I think, what the investors would look to invest in.
Thank you so much, Sanchan, for elaborating what are the opportunity landscape may look like post-COVID. I would like to now come to Maliha Appa. You are one of those startups in Bangladesh that I would like to give the credit for, I think, being the first responders in many ways. While everybody was, forced to go under lockdown, I think together with a few other startups, you kept the lifeline alive, so to say. You kept the essentials like groceries, medicines, supplying to people's doorsteps. And thank you for doing that. Going forward, I think there are a lot more challenges, which also brings a lot of opportunities as well. I think some of those are around the supply chain and so forth. Those are immediate, but I'm sure there are also longer term opportunities building on the behavior shift that you have earlier on described. So if you would like to, talk about post-COVID, what opportunities that you can look forward to, or if there are messages for young, mid to small size startups, for example, who are part of the audience, who are not only looking to survive, but they're also looking into, what they can do more or better off by taking advantage of this opportunity, and what can they look forward to post-COVID. So this will be your opportunity to share some of those wisdom.
No, look, I mean, the world will continue. Pandemics have happened in the past. We have gotten over them, and good results have come out of every pandemic. After the world wars had happened, some very good things happened all over the world after every big crisis we went through. And the good thing about being a startup entrepreneur is that the fact that you started a company on your own and took that big, sahosh, is you're courageous. And I think we are, by nature, we are optimistic people, and we see opportunities, and we are resilient, So this is, see it as a porikha God has given us. It's like a test we have to go through for a year and a half, and it's going to be over. Virus already testing, vaccine already testing hoche. So it is going to get commercialized. Our government is also taking a lot of good steps. Bangladesh, we will go through it. As a country, we have gone through floods, we have gone through war, we have gone through so many things. We'll go through this as well. What is great is what Sanchan is saying, is that as a nation, as human beings, will come together more and do collaborate and do things. We'll rise above all the petty fights we have over various things and collaborate. So good things will definitely come out of it. For us, fortunately, we are in an industry where definitely adaptation will increase. So see that as an opportunity. And the other thing is that most of the people in the startup community are very young. আমার তো অনেক বয়স, I'm 40 up, but most of you are like below 40. So this is a year and a half, sail through this. It's going to be very tough. Be compassionate, communicate through these times. Year and a half is nothing, when you're so young. It's going to fly through. Many opportunities will come. Keep the lookout for those opportunities. Prepare yourself. If you can pivot to it now. Even if you can't pivot to it, আমরা সবাই optimistic. We're all talking about the optimistic stuff, and I'm like that as well. But some of us will sink. Some of us in the startup community will sink, and that's totally okay. People could sink for so many reasons, and in a way, this is like the most valid reason to sink, because the whole world is in a recession. So if you sink, it's not the end of the world. Airplanes will fly, people will travel, things, ride sharing will happen, things will all come back a year and a half. God forbid, if you have to sink with grace, and be prepared to come back a year and a half from now. In terms of opportunities, as we mentioned, I'm sure like we do, you guys also read up, all the international media out there. So, there are opportunities in education, there are opportunities in healthcare, there is opportunities in logistics, digitization. You don't have to do grocery delivery. There was a question that should we all start doing grocery delivery because so many people have started doing it. No, you don't. Grocery delivery will also become very competitive, and there are numerous nuances there. So, logistics industry, think about the essentials. I think, what we can do is think about more essential services as opposed to discretionary. But somebody whose heart is in doing something in airline industry, airlines will fly again. Human beings, we have to go across the world. A year and a half later, things will become normal. So I would say that, let's, all be honest and open and understand that we're all in the same boat, be it a big startup, be it a small startup. All of us are in the same boat. At Sahaj, we are cutting down cost as well. I'm thinking about worrying about cost every day and looking for revenue opportunities as well. So all of us are in the same boat, and we are resilient people. Humankind will survive, and definitely survive for the better. So be optimistic, and I'm pretty sure all of us can sail through this with grace. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Malihapa. I think there is a lot of reassurance in what you have just said. I would like to build on this and come to Ijaz Bhai for his final message. Ijaz Bhai, when you and I talk about, we also talk about how essentially at the end of the day, all founders are also leaders. And, this is a time when, founders let their leader side rise. And then there is a lot of things happening out there at the macro level, and also inside our individual companies, inside our families. So as someone who were consistently delivering for the young people in Bangladesh, and I'm sure looking forward to do more global level, please do share your messages, and we'll be grateful if you could also talk about the opportunities that you see in front of us rising out of this crisis. So over to you, Ajaj Bhai, for your last message.
I agree. I think Sanchayan and Maliha did a great job in summarizing what I had to say very eloquently. The first point I want to make is, the title of your session is Surviving Till the End. And the first point to remember is that death, the living. You have to be alive, and your business has to be alive. You have to be alive physically. So I think it's important in this current crisis to look after yourself, to to look after yourself, to look after your business, and do everything that is necessary to survive. And I agree with Maliha that this is going to pass in a year and a half. We need to be realistic, realistic and optimistic, because if we don't have hope, then what is it that I'm looking forward to? So there has to be that sense of hope that yes, things will improve. Sinking, I have never really looked at, when I looked at my own journey, I've always felt that if the ship sinks, I sink with the ship. I have never differentiated myself from the ship. I never looked at these two things as separate entities. So throughout my journey of running BYLC, my feeling always was, if this ship sinks, I am the captain of it, and I'm also going to sink with the ship. You know, and in other words, that's sort of been the commitment that I have approached running BYLC. And the last two questions that I was asked was about product market fit. I did not even know what product market fit was 12 years ago when I started BYLC. I thought I need to teach young people leadership. I believed in it. I went out and I started telling people that, this is something that people need to have. Having that conviction is very important. You need to believe uh, that your business is going to thrive, you're going to survive. I think that conviction is very important. And when I talk about conviction, it must not be just about your product. It has to be the customer. For a startup, what is the customer's pain that I'm solving? If I'm obsessed with solving a customer's problem, opportunities will come. All of us are looking at ways that we need to pivot, we need to navigate. Um, Start from there and recognize, remember what Sanchan had said, VCs will not look at companies in Bangladesh, high risk markets, just online vetting will not be done. They will need to come to Bangladesh, they will need to travel to Bangladesh, look at new deals. So this is going to take some time, So, the startups who are looking at raising funding, who were planning on raising funding in the next 3 months, may have to wait for a year, year and a half. So we just need to hunker down, survive for the next 18 months and do whatever is necessary to survive. And I want to end with throughout history, if you look at species or companies that have survived, it's not the strongest ones. It's not the one that had the most talented teams. It was the ones who were most receptive to change. If we can embrace the change, if we are adaptive, we can change with the world, then our chances of survival will increase. So I would encourage everyone to, to be as adaptive as we can and retain that optimism and commitment, and together we can make a difference. And the final call I would give is, look, we all care about business, we all care about startups, but most importantly, we care about people, we care about society. Now is a time, instead of thinking just making a quick buck for myself, if I can help 5 other people in Bangladesh particularly, there is no way the government can supply the food that is required for all of our citizens. So we have to step up, we have a role. Shahos is doing its bit, we are trying to do our bit, but each one of us have to play a part. Beyond thinking about our startups, we also have to think about people who are not as privileged as us, and do whatever we can from our position. So thank you.
Absolutely. I think this has been a privilege and honor hosting all of you. And I just remember one message that we got from one previous episodes. If there is nothing else that you can do at this time, I think one way you keep your sanity with you is by giving back. So if your business has shut down, if your team is not there, you go and be part of what good other people are trying to extend. So I would like to reiterate the call from Malihapa to join Amra Korbo Joy, and also to think of Mission Safe Bangladesh, and to echo Ijaz Bhai's call to see how other platforms can be supported by you. I think that will be one way you can also keep yourself, I think, uh, coming to term with this crisis, and what you can do. We would like to, before we close the call, we'd like to do a final quick poll, because we do believe in our customers and you are our customer. And we would like to understand if this has been of any use to you. We have not been asking you to pay us, but pay others, but still we're interested if we should continue doing more of this or we shouldn't. As my colleagues are sending you the poll, I would also like to take the opportunity. Yes, the poll is in front of you. Please do vote and let us know if we have been of any use. And we will know in a bit how we have done today. I wanted to also share, as we will part in a bit, that people have sent very strong messages of gratitude to all of you, the panelists. I wanted to read out one particular. This has been a very informative session, and really appreciative of all of this leaders' time. So thank you, all of you. I know you are extremely busy. You have made time a good 2 hours for this, and then a number of minutes and hours before this to get prepared for this. I think that's a big contribution to the startup ecosystem. We hope we will get to you definitely in future. And startups who are on the call today, I hope that it has been of some use. We will get to know a little bit about how we have done today out of the result. We would also like to invite you to perhaps the last episode of this show, which is going to be in the next week on 29th. And the title of that show is Light at the End of the Tunnel. So I know that there are still questions are coming in. So great, we got the poll here. So we got, I don't know how to read it. So it's overwhelmingly, I think it's 94% said yes. So I would consider that a good, achievement for us as a panel. And we have got a lot of questions still flowing in, but I think, we will find a way to bring you back answers as we bring new episodes. Thank you all the panelists for your time. Thank you the audience. And thank you Team Better Stories for putting the show. And I really hope that we all will survive this crisis and we all will be able to take care of our families and our people. And don't forget to take care of yourself. I think if we survive as individual leaders, we'll be able to take care of other people. So thank you so much. Signing off for the day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
Take care, everyone.
you. Bye. You too. Take care.